Guess who's back? It's good Power Rangers comics and blurry picture. Don't be blurry, I'm trying to do a beginning bit for the video.
Dawson's Rambles.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here, and welcome to my review for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue number 40, the start of the Necessary Evil arc. Necessary Evil, of course, referring to Beyond the Grid being the necessary evil we had to get through while they prepared this story. I don't know what the Necessary Evil is going to be, but this is the true successor to Shattered Grid, and not necessarily like they're doing a big crossover event, but I mean this is the more true follow-up to it. Beyond the Grid is more of a detour, but I'll get into that shortly about how you should watch the detour on TBS because it's honestly a really funny show, but that's unrelated. So I really like this issue. Obviously, we're debuting the White Ranger. I was excited about that because that's one of my favorite suits. One of my favorite versions of Tommy because versions, not virgins of Tommy, because I always thought the suit represented a physical redemption from his days as the Green Ranger by being physically represented by this suit, and I think it means even more now after we saw the worst possible version in him in the form of Lord Draken. The Shattered Grid ended with the question of like, okay, the universe is being reset, it's being reformed after Shattered Grid by Team Shattered Grid, which was the mmpr Rangers, Jen and Samurai Lauren. So they were saying, the Morphin Masters were saying, like, it's gonna reset, but things won't be exactly the way they were. We all wondered what they meant while we were in Beyond the Grid. The opening panels of this issue are actually basically the same panels from that, so they reiterate that to remind you it's going to be important. But there is a bit of a time skip, so now we have White Ranger, and there was those questions like, is the White Ranger still going to be Tommy? Are Rocky, Adam, and Aisha coming in? Yes, that all happened. There was some questions and theories about, would Matt be the White Ranger? Would it be somebody new somehow? Would maybe it be Jason? Because remember, he was supposed to take up the mantle in the coinless timeline. But it is in fact Tommy. Rocky, Adam, and Aisha are now here, and I'm happy about that. It's not an immediate change to the status quo, but there is some really cool stuff coming down the pipeline. And I'll admit, there would have been some interesting bits by changing things up. Like, what if, I always thought, I was kind of curious, what if Tanya was there instead of Aisha? What if this is a timeline where they were already switched and Aisha came in later? Like, I don't know, that was just a weird thought of mine. But like, so there's not an immediate change in the status quo compared to what we know. I'm a poet and even though I rhymed those words. But I'm happy about it because the writing has been so good for the core mmpr characters compared to the bare bones writing in the show. So I actually liked getting in-depth versions of the characters, and I've always been more of a Rocky, Adam, and Aisha guy. Maybe not so much Rocky, but that team. So I was excited to see the Boom teams get their hands on those characters, and we want to kaboom it! I'm happy about that, especially Adam, who's one of my favorites. I'm looking forward to seeing how they write him. I'm also happy they kept Tommy. Again, like I said, I always liked how that physically represented his redemption, and I think it means even more since they actually look into the character development and psychological impact of all that, instead of just glossing over it. But so a lot of the issue is really basic, kind of a back to basics mmpr issue, but there is some exciting setup for the future. I mean, we basically just have the Rangers fighting a generic threat, but there's some stuff about the new Rangers, Rocky, Adam, and Aisha, having trouble adjusting, which is something that never happened in the show. If you've ever seen the movie Beer Fest, it's basically like the joke where Landfill 2 just replaces Landfill 1, as if Landfill 1 never died. That's how they did replacements in the old show. Like, the new three immediately just replaced the old three, like, oh, we've just been friends this whole time, and, you know, the Wild West Rangers were just you. The other three never even existed to us. And this actually deals with ramifications of that, like the teams aren't working together perfectly right away, you know, because they were such a well-oiled unit before, having worked together for so long. So you have to get used to these three new rookies. Tommy's getting used to the leader role, and compared to Jason, like, that's the type of stuff we never got into in the old show. There were interesting concepts that were brought up, but never fully taken advantage of. So character-wise, I'm really excited about that, and I really like that. And Tommy did comment about how he felt different in the suit, and I was having a hard time adjusting to the power of the white light. They even made a joke about him being taller, which is probably some sort of meta reference about green and white being different heights. I'd never even paid attention to that, if I'm being honest. Really interesting character stuff set up, and there was even a bit where it appears that they've gone to the peace conference. We'll get to that in a second. If you're watching this, you know what I'm talking about. I know I'm holding off, but where they talk about, oh, we're getting a call from the peace conference. That was actually at the end. But even I like that there was a bit where Tommy seemed to have a resentment, and I think it was Kim that said a line like, well, they went to go talk about peace while we fight a war. And even though the peace conference isn't really a real thing, I mean, at least not for these three anymore, I like that. That's another ramification that we never really dealt with. And the other one, I'm like, oh God, isn't it great they're just sitting around Switzerland talking about peace and just abandoning us? Like, it's just taking advantage of some cool concepts, and that frankly were there because of behind the scenes stuff and turning them into something interesting. But before I talk about the biggest part of the issue, there was also another cool part, which I'm going to flip to while I talk about it, which was obviously we have Lord Zedd, which we expected as well, who is the new antagonist, since we're basically in Season 2 territory, and he is talking to another new antagonist who may look familiar to you. His name's Jeff, if you can tell, if you're a fan. This is Doggy Kruger's race, but he's done up in red. I forget what his name is. It's Jeff, right? It's like Kane or something like that. Dane, there we go. He's got the mark of Dane. But dang it. Oh, that is super cool. Like, I love stuff like that. Like, it's still MMPR, but we got deep cuts to the lore. That'll be really cool. Who knows if he'll have any ties to Kruger ultimately, but regardless, it's a cool design. I want a custom figure of it or a variant for the Lightning Collection, but that's a cool bit that I really appreciated. That was a huge surprise because I kind of knew about the other stuff from before I got to read it, but that was a nice surprise. So that's already a cool bit they've set up in addition to the character dynamics. Don't know why I set that down. I was about to immediately pick it up. But remember I talked about that call to the peace conference. Check out that peace conference. So it turns out they did not go to the peace conference. They are part of a new team of Rangers off somewhere where they say they're pretty far off the grid. We have these cool new looking suits, or you know what I mean, they're new suits. We don't know what the helmets look like yet, but there's some stuff from like, this bit. This looks familiar to me. Why does that look familiar to me? Tell me, guys. But these look pretty cool. I'm looking forward to seeing the helmets. I think that's a really cool twist off of basically a dumb excuse they had to come up with because they wanted to hire new actors that weren't going to fight back about payment back in the day. So that's really neat. So, I mean, the peace conference probably did exist, but Zordon likely had them make it up so that they could go on whatever this mission is, because obviously the other Rangers aren't in on it. That's super cool on so many levels. We can have all these different adventures with those characters, continue their story in a different way that we don't know about, because obviously that didn't happen in the original timeline. Not to mention we're going to get some cool new suits out of it. It'll be interesting to see where they go from here, because like MMPR Pink, some people are like, well, it's not canon now, but I think my interpretation is MMPR Pink takes place in the timeline uninterrupted by Shattered Grid. So basically the comics version of where the show went. So they showed like Zack and Trini after the peace conference. I mean, they very well could end up in similar places. Like Zack and Trini still could end up hanging up the helmets after whatever this is, and then this might better set Jason up for where he was when they found him to be the Gold Ranger, where he was just traveling around. I think that's super interesting based on what we know of where they're supposed to go and where they're going now. I think that's really cool. I'm really excited about it. New suits, new stories. They do a really good job of taking this framework of what we know is happening in MMPR Season 2, but we're obviously going to be getting more in-depth differences. And it's going to be tying into Go-Go. I read a couple descriptions where they talked about how Jason's is setting up a covert team of Rangers called the Omega Rangers. I don't know if that immediately ties into this. I'm very fascinated, very exciting. I'm just happy to be excited about the MMPR comic again. Like, there's already a lot to theorize about. Like I said, it's crazy that I actually wanted to go back to MMPR, but it's nice to have the great art again, the great character work and dialogue, and the interesting story setup that's going to be happening across, I swear to Chuck, I'm just gonna hold it, that's going to be happening across both comics. I'm curious if anything beyond the grid will tie into it. In a way, I'm kind of hoping they did shout out in Promethean once, so that's something. I'm kind of hoping they end up tying it in at some point, just because with how much this is a direct continuation off of Shattered Grid's storyline, it makes Beyond the Grid feel even more like an awkward detour. So I'd like to see if they could find some way to make that count to the larger narrative, but we'll see. But overall, very solid start. This is a good place to jump on. You know, if you fell off after Shattered Grid, the quality is back. I'm very excited for it. I'd overall give the issue, I'm going to be generous today. I'm going to give it a 9. I'm giving out 9s today. But anyway, that's about it for this one. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. It helps me out a lot. And of course, don't forget to climb the steps and ring that bell for notifications for all my videos. Till next time, Dawson Ryder, signing out.